We're always telling your stories, and it's time someone tells ours. We're humans first, journalists second. We chose this career to give you a voice. Now we're voicing ours. It's true, journalism has much room for improvement, but not all hope is lost, and we want your trust back by humanizing one journalist at a time. We're sharing with you what we go through to bring you the news. The pain, the tears, the trauma, and the mental health struggles. It's painful, and sometimes we even work 2 jobs to make ends meet. But we all have something in common: the passion, the joy, and the love we feel for storytelling and holding the powerful accountable. That includes holding ourselves accountable. So here are stories from us. This is how we want to help improve the news industry. The Awakened Journalist is proud to present Media Healers by Emiliana Fajardo. Hi everyone, welcome back to The Awakened Journalist and our second season of Media Healers. Today we'll be speaking to Melissa Fajardo. She'll be telling us her story. Melissa was born in San Diego and raised in Tijuana, Mexico. She graduated from Suffolk University in Boston in 2015, and she's an award recipient of the Edward R. Murrow in 2019 for her coverage in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. Melissa has worked for multiple news outlets, one of them being Now This, where she worked as a producer, and she then moved on to work for a show on Netflix, which was also documentary and news-based. And Melissa actually decided to quit the news industry around October of 2020 to tend to her health, and decided to go back into the industry around April of 2021, this time as a producer in New York for The New Yorker. She has also been featured in Forbes for her work, especially for reporting on the Latinx community. So Melissa, congratulations on everything you've accomplished so far in the news industry, and welcome and thank you for agreeing to speak to us today.
Thank you for having me. I can only say that I wish I had this show when I started in this industry, and you're doing an amazing work by introducing people like us who have been in the industry and have really had really hard struggles, but have nowhere to share them. So I'm excited to dive deep, be real, and to talk to you and learn from you as well.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, Mel, so let's start with the basics. Why did you decide to become a journalist? Or how?
My gosh, I grew up in the border, right, of Tijuana and San Diego. For me, it was a very surreal experience, because when I started to go like 4th grade, 5th grade, I went to school in San Diego, but I lived in TJ. So my mornings and my afternoons and my social life was in Tijuana. I crossed the border to San Diego. So every day to go to school. So every day I would see 2 complete different worlds. Like in the morning, you're in Tijuana, the streets, it's everything but perfect, even though I love it. Obviously, insecurity, a lot of poverty in the streets, and cross to beautiful California. There's order, you follow the rules, like just a complete different world. And as I start to make friends in high school in San Diego who were American, everyone was just like, we are never going to Tijuana. That's the most dangerous place. And this stereotype, typical thing. And I was like, no, like, let me tell you stories. Like, yes, of course, there's horrific things happening anywhere in the world except America, because it has like law and order, but look at any other countries, right? So I really started to get interested in storytelling in high school, and pretty much when I was a junior, I knew that journalism was the way to go, in the sense of storytelling, the human sense. So yeah, it was right then and there, and I knew exactly my path. I was very lucky to know exactly where I wanted to go, that I wanted to not necessarily be in front of the camera, but like be in charge in making people's stories feel like a movie, real life impact, right? And produce beautiful stuff and beautiful films for a news outlet, because ultimately that's where the story gets told. That's how we find out about the world. That's where empathy or anger or any kind of emotion about what's going on in the world happens, right? So yeah, since high school, I would say.
That's amazing. And what a privilege that you were born and raised in a cross-border town. Because I lived in San Diego for almost a year and it's beautiful. And I loved, my favorite part, honestly, was crossing over to Tijuana. I love
Food.
Tijuana
That there's nothing that beats the food in Mexico. I will
for sure.
vouch for that.
Yeah. I
And
swear there's better food in Tijuana than there is in San Diego.
I believe you. Yes, I've seen both.
Melly, so okay, so you graduate from school and land your first job in the news industry. Was it what you always expected and dreamed of, or how was that first job for you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that it was not what I expected at all. I really wanted to work at NBC. I like really, 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 really wanted to work at NBC, not CNN for some reason, NBC. And I got really close with them. Like as soon as I was finishing my senior year, talking to different companies. I didn't want to be on air. I wanted to produce, but not live, more, packages. And I graduated in the boom of online video.
Mhm.
So like for me, that was like perfect. And I remember getting applying to this like tiny little startup that no one knew at the time, called Now This. And so they kind of, hit me up. I went into the interview. The newsroom was scrappy. It was not like, perfect. It's like, no, people were trying to figure out.
Mhm.
They just knew that they wanted to put text on video. No one was doing that. So the energy, it was all young people. They wanted to create news for young people by young people. So I really liked that idea, but like my ego was pulling me towards NBC and I was just like so focused, but I just had this gut feeling that Now This was gonna be someone big in a few years. And I took the shot of my instinct and I stayed at Now This. It was not what I expected at all, because since I was very young and very fresh in the industry, they kind of were like, okay, like try this out, try this out. Can I try this? Can we go longer on pieces? Can we do a short documentary? Will people watch it? Test, test, test. So at the beginning, I started in breaking news and I had a lot of trouble keeping up with that job, not only because it was like super demanding, but I I process them when I'm alone. Like we had to go like really, 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 really fast, watching a lot of stuff, be it, shootings, any kind of like breaking news situation. We actually had to scrub through like the Reuters footage or everything that was coming in raw from like AP or something like that. And that was my job for a little bit. I realized that I'm emotionally, I can't take it. So I got the opportunity to learn what I can take, what I cannot take, since a very like young in my career. And so, yeah, I grew a lot there. I was able to, they really liked that I was my authentic self in my Latina sense, right? So
Mhm.
they let me do a lot of, you know, reporting and stuff. And I didn't expect that I was gonna, I was able to do op-eds, be on camera, go viral, like produce. They were like, if we don't have money, just do it, So I would self-teach myself a lot.
Wow.
Um, and it was just very young and fresh, demanding as I grew with that company. So it was a great growing and learning experience and finding my voice as a journalist, because no one was telling me exactly like, do this in this tone or this way. I did study broadcast, and broadcast was very much like that. You adapt you're not personality, you are, the communicator, period.
Mhm.
Right? So, and look perfect, and be smart, and don't look tired, and go. And with now, this was different. It was scrappy. It was, you get a voice, and it was more opinion based in so many ways. So yeah.
I love what you said about um learning very early in your career what you could and couldn't take. For example, with the breaking news, it's definitely a lot of pressure. Watching raw footage coming in from agencies like Reuters or AP and whatnot, especially in shootings, and watching that all day over and over again can be so exhausting.
There's certain stories that shape you,
Mhm.
right? And actually sometimes it's like, I feel like the least expected ones, like maybe you get assigned to it. For me, the day I realized I was not really cut out to be this like breaking news machine, in the sense of like, we're just putting it out there, and be the first receiver, was when this car ran through like this crowd, right? And I covered like shootings before, everything, but like that footage, it was like 11 p.m. and I think I was like on night duty
Yeah.
for breaking news that day. And I remember like just getting the raw footage and just seeing limbs flying of like, women and young people. And I went to the bathroom and I just like puked. Like I was like, oh my God. And I still have to cut this video, by the way. Like you watch that and you still have to edit it together, package it together, to show people like what the hell just happened, right? It's insane. You want people to find out, and you have to like tough it out. So I puked, I came back to the desk, and I did it. And I cut the video, and it was out, and we blurred everything that we needed to blur. And yeah, I just like remember having like some really hard days. That was like my first thought. It was like, okay, I need to like, find my path in my career. Cause if this is it, I can't. It really did shook me so much, like for a couple of days. In that sense, yeah. And with Now This, it was kind of like that way. And I had great editors and great senior producers who kind of like let me go the other route into more like documentary, what I wanted to do. And then one of the times that really shaped me is that I did an op-ed when Trump, I guess everyone was obviously shaped by Trump in some
I agree.
like in some way, we're all freaking scarred.
Yeah.
We're all scarred for those 4 years.
For better or worse, but yeah.
Every time I meet people, I was like, where were you when Trump got elected? Like,
Yeah.
especially journalists, right? Because it's like, it's so, even we were so blindsided. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing. But when he announced,
Yeah.
and we all thought it was a joke, and joke was on us.
Yeah.
Um, they were like, my boss was like, Melissa, you should write a response to this
Mm.
and say it on camera. And I'm like, no, like this guy's a joke. Like he's
Yeah.
a joke. He doesn't know what he's saying about Latinos. I was angry.
Yeah.
Obviously, his announcement was attacking my people directly.
Directly.
Yeah. And so she kind of like told me, like, write something, I'll read it. Like, if I think it's good, like we should just record it. Like, what, we're testing everything right now. We film it in the studio and we record it. And I was so nervous about it, because it was an op-ed, like it was an opinion, and we were starting to get traction online. I didn't know at the time. I sounded very opinionated. I was very fresh. So basically the video started like, you probably think I'm here to say a big you, Donald Trump, but actually I'm here to say gracias.
Yeah.
And so that video went super viral. It has like 29 million views on Facebook.
Oh my gosh.
And And that shaped me to believe in my voice, because I go into an American newsroom and all I wanted to be was the American journalist, was the know-it-all in Congress, know-it-all on what bill is what, who was the vice president in 1819, like these like things that I didn't know. And I was really trying to mold myself into being an American journalist and act like them and be like them. That was the first time I realized like I could be me, and with my background and being Latina and everything, and people something I created resonated with people, and it really shaped me to believe in myself as a storyteller and as authentic me, not the journalist, that I was surrounded with or that I met in networking events.
And I love that writing that op-ed was kind of that permission for you to help you mold yourself and believe in yourself and your talent and what you have to offer as a journalist in the industry.
We grow up watching what it's supposed to be and how you're supposed to dress. Like, for example, I like to dress like colorful and, but no, like when I started, I was like, no, I need to look a certain way. And you start shape yourself. And I think a lot of people really do lose a sense of identity coming into an industry because of that perception that you need to look, you need to sound a perfect way, especially if it's an American newsroom, because they're the leading, everyone who's everyone in the world like watches the news coming out of here, and as you're part of it, so you have this stereotype that you want to fit in, but at the end of the day, the country, as we know, looks more and more diverse. It took me a while to realize that I could, be myself.
Yeah, and I mean, even looking at like local news stations, they often have stylists, and literally you have every single anchor wearing the same Rent the Runway dress, or everyone's just switching around dresses, and it hasn't changed in like the past 30 years, and that needs to change because we need authenticity in newsrooms.
The truth of the matter is it's not sustainable, because the mold is going to break. Like, you're not going to be able to fit in it anymore. You're going to have to break it at some point. You could shatter and cut your feet because it might be glass, or you can thrive by stepping out of it. So
you were going to dive into another story that also, I think, helped shape you as a journalist after writing the op-ed.
Yeah, I think obviously in the industry, we develop such a thick skin. Obviously I've had huge rejections. So I was piloting one of my shows called Through Our Eyes for HBO. It was a really, really incredible experience. They picked up my pilot, but they didn't end up picking up the show after we produced it. And I really, really, really worked my ass off there. I was beyond stress. Like I thought I knew stress, right? This was my first relationship with like actual damaging stress, damaging to myself. This was my first encounter with it, working on this production show, and it was my idea, my show, talking to executives in HBO, and that pressure of like, okay, great, we need the pilot by X amount of date. I needed to hire a team. I needed to make the decisions of like a lot of decisions that I never had to like make. So I was constantly very stressed throughout like 7 months, in the sense that I shut off when I'm stressed. So I'm a very social person, and I'm an extrovert, and I feed off that. But when I get stressed, the first thing I do is I go into my cocoon of stress, and there is nothing that's going to alleviate that stress at work than working more and more and more and more and more. So yeah, I did that show. That was my first encounter that really shaped me, in the sense that, like, ironically, I knew I wanted to do premium streaming, a show for streaming, a documentary show for streaming. And and I got bit by that bug, and I still want to do it. And that's like one of my goals. But it was, first of all, they didn't pick up the show. So I was like rejected, and dealing with that was really, really challenging. Cause I was on camera for that. I was a producer, like everything. Right. And it was months long work with an amazing team that I got, the honor to hire, but it definitely took a toll in my body. I shook it off. I didn't get the show. I don't know what would have happened to me if I would, but I kind of like jumped back into the newsroom, but I was already kind of, I don't know, feeling like I had closed a chapter at Now This. I feel like we all get to be in newsrooms for a while, and chapters open and chapters close. And so once I closed that chapter, I was hired as one of the producers of this Netflix show that I really, really liked. I was really, really happy when I got that offer. But that was my tipping point that I hadn't realized, of all those like years of cocooning and bottling up some stress, coming really fresh out of the show I produced at Now This and everything. And so basically, you have a show to produce. They completely, tell you, here's your episode, here's what you have to do, and here's by when you have to do it. I was lost. The deadline was obviously super, super close. It's the big leagues. It's a show that like millions and millions and millions of people watch. I'm a fan of the show. I'm a fan of the people that I'm working with. I have nothing bad to say for anyone working on that show, but like the amount of anxiety and nonstop working hours, I felt that no matter how many hours I put into this, I was sleeping at 4 a.m., waking up at 7:30. It wasn't sustainable. And I started to feel sick in my body. I hadn't encountered panic attacks just yet. I hadn't met those suckers. Yeah. Like, I was like, the friend you never want to see ever.
You don't even wish that to your worst enemy.
Yep.
Honestly.
Yeah. And it started with panic attacks. And I remember feeling really weird, like on my first one. Then it started messing with like my digestive system, in where, again, I would eat and couldn't like hold food down. Then I would like, my body started rejecting the food. The panic attacks came sometimes with obviously out of breath, uncontrollable tears. I tried every single meditation. I tried every single thing. I called like people in crisis. It was really hard to understand. I didn't have anyone to talk to who would really understand. I started this job during a pandemic. The coworkers I had, I mean, super nice people, but like, you don't know them. You feel like your world starts crashing and that no one understands what you're going through. So I didn't talk to anyone. And my family was worried. I'm such a family girl. My friends were worried. I wouldn't answer the phone. I was really going through it until the point that my cousin actually came to New York out of being worried for me, and she saw one of my panic attacks. Like,
wow.
Like she couldn't, like she's never seen me like that. And I had just gotten used to them. Like, they happen usually around 9 a.m. I'm like, okay, like here comes, like it starts here. And like, and she was like, oh, like, what are you doing? Like, she was kind of like someone who's not in the industry, because I had friends in the industry, like, yeah, like it's really hard. Yeah, I'm struggling too. But like I needed someone from the outside in to come and tell me like, what is wrong with you? This is not okay. Like, what is happening? I'm like, I get these every day. She was like, that is not okay. Like just everything was wrong with my body. My body was manifesting like basically against this but I could not quit. She was like, why don't you quit? I'm like, quit? Me? Oh my God, no, what are you talking about? Like, as my hair is like falling out, right?
Yeah.
I'm like brushing my hair, like balls of, the hair. Like, no. It's like,
And I feel
why
like
not?
the friends that you did speak to about it a little bit in the industry, if they were going through it, there's kind of like, I guess, a stigma or a need to just toughen up and deal with it and push through to deadlines. And yeah, so quitting is usually not an option, but go on.
Not
I
an
love your
option.
cousin, by the
Nor,
way.
nor should we let it get to the point where your only resource is quitting and figuring out being unemployed during a pandemic or whatever your situation is. Nor should it be that way,
For sure.
And I think for me, I think I was really scared. Something that I did notice in this process, I was really scared in communicating that I couldn't do it, or I couldn't, I was new, it was a pandemic, like you didn't know anyone. I was also alone all the time, like because my roommate was gone and like that didn't help.
Yeah.
But I didn't communicate that I was really, 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 really struggling, be it with the deadline or the way things were being handled. I just kept it, and I kept eating that, and it kept coming out in my body in ways that I hadn't seen before. It was the falling of the hair. It was, not being able to like keep food in, nourishing myself. Like we need nutrients, that's when I was like, okay, yeah, that one is like what's going on. I went to doctors here, almost didn't have time actually to go to the doctor, like really scared to miss something of work to actually go to a physician here. Or like I was really, like I'm not, if I do this, that means I'm not going to sleep, tonight. Cause it's like you take the subway, like everything is a thing to go during the week here in New York. It takes time. So I was in that mind process of putting me in the back. Like, you're not important. This show is way more important right now. This is what you need to do. You know, and yeah, my cousin came, she slapped me out of it. She was like, you can quit and nothing's going to happen. I fought her on it.
Yeah.
Fought myself on it, even though kind of like I meditated not having the stress, and that was the only meditation that worked for me. Like visualizing being free of this stress was, out of all of the millions of meditations, the breath work that I tried as a desperation, visualizing that I was set free from, be it the industry or this, for just like literally 1 month. I was like, just 1 month, and I can get back on my feet. And again, the journalist mindset, keep going. I can 1 month, and I think I can go see doctors that I want to see in Mexico, not estranged sockdoc.com strangers that I don't know and I don't feel comfortable, go to Mexico, get my life together, get my health on track, go to the psychiatrist, go to the therapist, figure it out, put myself first for 1 month. And yeah, that's when I realized, like, this is a time when I have to choose myself. If not, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to complete this, right? Like, it's a lose situation, because you're not going to do your best work. Like, stress and anxiety and everything is the biggest, I was going to say it's the biggest cock block, basically, but it's the biggest blocker for creativity, for the love of storytelling that we had coming into this in the first place. So it's counterproductive, putting so much pressure on just the people creating it, the people behind the camera, the people in front of the camera, making these products, getting the story out there. It's counterproductive to the quality storytelling that every single news company says they want to do. We are quality. Everyone's quality, but no one, really takes the time to treat their journalists with quality. It's a very hard business being in in the storytelling industry, as a journalist, specifically with all the digital aids constantly telling you have to be on this, on that, some breaking news happened, like you have to be constantly on. And I am talking so much.
No, but I love it. You're a journalist at heart. You're a great storyteller. I love it. And I love that you guided us through each step of kind of like what you started feeling, how it evolved, and what the breakthrough or the time you kind of like just collapsed and decided to, okay, I'm going to listen to my cousin's advice and I need to quit. And I love your cousin for letting you know that it's okay to, because I don't see it as quitting. I see it as realizing your self-worth and that no job is worth your health or your life.
The way I dealt it was, if I was stressed about work, I would work more and I would work the weekends, and that would stress me out more. So I feel like now when I'm stressed about a project or a specific story, my first instinct that I have to stop myself is like, you have to try to disconnect, like take the weekend to disconnect. Because I could go through working Saturdays and Sundays, and even if it's like for 5 hours, I'm already off that weekend. My mindset is still on the stress of the specific story that I want to tell or the specific deadline that I have. So like catching myself and stopping that, like, I'm stressed, I need to work more, and saying, no, you're stressed, you need to go do 20 minutes Pilates, girl, or like,
Yeah.
something like that, instead of going more. Because sometimes you start to feel so much self-doubt because you could be working hours and hours and still not getting anywhere. And that's because psychologically your anxiety is closing up your chest, your mind, your creative flow. So I caught that, like, again last year, to kind of like stop. And then, yeah, as cliche as it sounds, like, just do breath work in the morning. If it's off, like, there's some days when I try and I do 10 minutes. I'm no freaking guru. And like, don't worry.
Yeah.
I know freaking guru. I try
Yeah.
with all my life. Yes, I want to go to Bali one day. Yes, I want to go through all of that. I want all of that.
Yeah.
I cannot, for the love of me, do more than 15 minutes.
I love that honesty. I'll go to Bali with you when you're ready.
Yes,
Go to
let's
Bali.
do it. Let's do it. So yeah, to pinpoint how anxious you are that morning and what kind of like actions at least I have to take, I sit down for 10, 15 minutes, do headspace meditation, and sometimes my chest is already tight because the first thought I had in the morning was something I was failing at, or was, those little monsters, like, was not doing enough, or a deadline, or this and that. And so like sitting down, breathing, and if you notice like it's a little bit tight, is probably because you need to like focus that day, either before or after work, to try to, alleviate that stress and anxiety, because that's already sitting down and just being there and breathing. It's the best way we connect with our bodies and how the stress is manifest, like getting out right through us.
We don't need to be gurus, or we don't need to be expert yogis or meditators to kind of get a handle on our bodies, mental, physical, and emotional, to kind of start our day a little bit more balanced. Like 10, 5, or 15 minutes is more than enough for you to connect with yourself, understand what you're feeling, what you're going through, so you can start your day in a more positive note and not waking up and thinking about like, okay, what stories am I going to write about today? What I need to find a story, I need to find an interview, am I doing enough?
The stress of finding a story, like, and nothing being enough. And that also always gets me. Yeah, that's something that I don't feel like we talk about it a lot. Like, because it's an industry, like there's some really the high competitiveness on like in the industry, specifically if you're doing original storytelling or want to go a little longer or like this and that. There's so much stress. I wish we're not out to get each other. Like, genuinely tell me how you found this thing that you're pitching. Like, I'm curious, and like, I feel people, it's like, oh, like I met this guy. I'm like, oh, bullshit. Like, bullshit. That's not how you found him. Tell me,
Yeah.
And we're so competitive, and I get really, really stressed out when I know I have to start a new project and basically cast a character and everything. And I get really, really, really stressed. Like, I shut down a lot when I have to do that. And I put a lot of pressure on myself. Yeah.
Mel, and I love what you just said, because I think when we understand that we could help each other so much more when we collaborate instead of compete with each other. Like, if we just realize we're all going through the same stress, finding a story is as stressful for you as it is for me. Like, if we just help each other out and work collaboratively, like, we can make the industry so much better. Because there's no need to compete. Like, nobody in the audience is going to find out like if you found this story first, or if nobody cares about that anymore, honestly. Like,
idea, actually, right now that you said that, I think this would be really, really good. Maybe it's something that you could do. I would definitely add to it. So basically, we should have a spreadsheet of like really great pitches that didn't get made, or like because how many times you have a really great story and your editor's like, no, pass.
Yeah.
And you're like,
oh, I worked so hard for this.
I'm stressed for 2 weeks to tell you this one line. And you just like,
yeah.
So, great stories about amazing human beings that never get told. Why not start a spreadsheet? When I'm in need of a story, I need a little inspiration, I go to the graveyard of like all of us who wanted to tell the story but never got around to it or never got made, but it's a great idea. I think we should think about something like that together.
Sure. And have like a spreadsheet, like sending invites to journalists worldwide.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, Mel. I love that.
I think
work on that.
It would, because see, this is what we're talking about, alleviating some sort of stress, right? And so, not that you're always going to do this, but like, hey, I need a pick me up. I honestly don't have a story to pitch and it's making me nervous. So I'm going to grab one off the spreadsheet, right? Like something like that. It's finding ways. And you know what, like, as I listen to myself talking about the meditation stuff, and it used to be so annoying to me hearing about this when I was stressed. There's nothing more stressful than someone who is like seeking advice when they're going through anxiety and they don't meditate, and they tell them, oh, try meditation. I hated that because I had tried it and I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit there and breathe for 10 minutes. So we also have to be real. And I read the self-help books, and sometimes they made me even more anxious. I'm like, so at what time am I going to do all this to make myself better if I don't even have time in the real world? Like, no, Katie Guru, I do not have time to get a sound bath. Like, like I would love to. I would love to. Except in New York, sound baths are like $300, and now I'm like short on rent. So that is also making me stressful. Yeah, I'm like, thank you for that self-help book. You didn't help me. Shit. Yeah. So it's the worst when you are seeking the worst when you're seeking that and someone tells you like something as basic as that. So I would say, give it a try for like 2 minutes. And if you can't meditate, just have a conversation with yourself. Like, how am I feeling this morning? Before obviously checking your phone, before all of that stuff, and take a walk and have like this self-dialogue check-in with yourself. So like, the industry and us together as journalists have to like come together to not let people get to the point where, medical bills can stack up. I didn't have insurance at the time when that happened to me. That's one of the main reasons that I needed to go to Mexico to heal in so many ways, like physically, mentally, emotionally. And the other part that I wanted to talk to you about, that it's like being a journalist is a career that you don't go into it just because like, oh, well, I don't know what to study in college. Like, I've never met anyone who's a journalist. You don't stumble into it. It's not like accounting or like, super respectful careers or like finance. You don't stumble into it and you could get by just being an okay person. Like, no, the person who studies that career and goes into it is an ambitious, badass person just by choosing it, because you have to be so vulnerable. You have to put yourself second. Your story, your character is first. And that, that's how you're going to live your life. But it is a career that it's public, no matter what medium you're in.
Yeah.
Writing, TV, anything that you do gets out there, and that comes with a lot of pressure. And then there's the ego aspect of it, right? Like, my ego was crushed. I couldn't quit, even though I knew that something really, really bad could have happened to me if I kept going. I didn't want to quit because I am not a quitter. That's what like my ego would say at that time. What are people going to think? What are they going to think? Like, I'm never going to get a job in the industry ever, ever, ever again. Like, this is,
and because that's one of the first things that they tell us too, like, don't quit, you'll never get a job in the industry again. It's like, no, you will. We need a break sometimes.
Yeah, of course. And you'll always, always, always figure it out. Like, once we don't have that pressure and that incredible amount of stress or unattainable deadlines that are not sustainable if they happen every week, once you step out of that, you will figure it out, because you originally are a storyteller and you originally are a creative person. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you will figure it out once you get a chance to breathe and to let that creativity and that enthusiasm for why you decided to become a journalist in the first place flows. Mm-hmm. Because if you let that flow, all this pressure and all this anxiety blocks exactly our mission.
Mel, I wanted to ask you, how was that time for you healing with your family and being back home for a while?
I think the first months were filled with a lot of shame. Mm-hmm. So much shame for me. Mm-hmm. I was angry that my body had failed me, that I couldn't do it, that, I thought I was the weak one. It was a lot of shame. It was working through that. Seeing obviously doctors, psychiatrists, and I found an amazing therapist that, honestly, finding a good therapist that clicks with you mm-hmm. is the hardest. It's harder than dating in New York. Like, I swear to God, finding a good therapist that you click and like understands you is just so draining to try to find a therapist, because you have to tell basically all the trauma that you're carrying. Hello, this is why I'm messed up. It's exhausting. You have to.
It's so exhausting. Like, I just realized how messed up I am. Now I need to tell you how messed up I am. Yeah. Can we work on fixing me?
So it was a lot of trying to find someone and relive in the stress, and also not understanding really. I was borderline depressed in some sense. And I was really getting to that point of like clinical medical depression, because I've been there before. And I was so scared to be in that dark place again. Like, that's the number one place I never, ever want to buy a ticket to, like, ever.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, yeah, it was really challenging. For the first time in like 6 years, I didn't have a job. But I had felt so identified with me being a journalist. I was so identified with that job, that the job was my identity.
Yeah.
So I come back home in a pandemic year, no title attached.
Mhm.
Like I didn't even have a boyfriend at the time. So like no job. You're not a journalist anymore. Like, what are you? No relationship, nothing. I was feeling defeated. It was really, really challenging. I was like, okay, who are you without being a journalist? I never asked myself that question. I think like first things, some of the first things that come up in a conversation. What do you do? You know, I'm so attached. I see that as my identity.
Mhm.
I saw that as my identity, not anymore. Like, but so I was lost, and it took me, it was really hard. A lot of crying, a lot of reading, a lot of writing,
Yeah.
because I didn't understand who you know, what I was going through without that I didn't have that anymore. Like I told you over the phone, like no deadline,
Mhm.
like is ever worth you being dead for. Like, and it's really drastic, obviously. It's really drastic. Not, it's just an example.
Yeah.
Um, it's drastic, but it's real. Like we want to live longer lives, create better quality content, grow, like grow within your career, within your personal life, as a person in general. Like if we don't catch early how we could do that and how we could manage and say no where no is due, and say I can't make it where that is due, the expectation you're actually putting on me is unrealistic
Mhm.
when that is due.
Yeah.
Like we don't learn how to say that because we're scared that we will never work in media again, because that rhetoric is like also within, you know, if we don't change that and we don't implement that, like it really can take a toll on how long we live, you know, our, how do we feel? How do we show up for other people that you love, you know? So it was like basically 6 months, and I'm still working through it. That's the thing. Don't stop. When
Mhm.
you kind of like get your feedback on the game, or like, oh, you feel good. Maybe I don't need to see this doctor anymore. Maybe I don't need to see this therapist. It's when you feel good and like gaining traction again and feeling more like yourself again, that the most important work gets done. Because I was in a complete crisis, and obviously the crisis lasted like a month, and then the healing work. But to answer your question, completely defeated. It was the hardest thing I've done in such a long time. But I needed it, and I have no regrets at all. Absolutely. And guys, I got another job in media. Like you, if you give yourself some time for yourself, like you're gonna get back on track. And I got it during a pandemic, because I'm the genius who quits during a pandemic. So if we can do it, and if I got this job during a global pandemic, like you can do it. If you need a break, give yourself the freaking break.
And I think, I mean, it's beautiful what you went through, and I know it was painful, but it was kind of like rebuilding yourself, and understanding that being a journalist was what you worked as, and not who you were, and that your family and your friends are going to love you regardless, with or without the title. And the rhetoric inside of the news industry, yeah, definitely needs to change, because the industry is losing great talent, because there's not enough resources and there's not enough awareness of our mental health and the struggles we go through. And you're not the first to tell me that this has been, your journey and your healing journey. So thank you so much for sharing it, because it's amazing. And I think you're a great example for whoever's going through a hard time, or trying to make a decision whether they should quit for a little bit or take a break, or whatever to work on themselves, that you'll be fine. You'll find a job again in the news industry if that's what your heart desires.
Yeah, and also I would say to like listen what's making you like really stressed, because we often forget, we get caught up in this in our jobs as journalists, but like journalist has millions of meanings. A newsroom has so many different positions. Like there's no shame in changing. Like if you like editing and that kind of like you feel calm when you're editing, it's still an honorable job from going to being, a producer on the 6 a.m. Morning live show to something that brings you peace, but you're still part of the work, right? Like remember why you got into it in the first place, and you can always change paths within, within the industry. And I feel it's hard because, like as you were saying, we live it so publicly, our jobs, right? It's public because if you do a good job, you need to get people to watch or read or stream whatever you did. That's your job, because the more people see about an issue, we raise awareness about an issue, and that's basically the job.
Mhm.
Waking up in the middle of the night after like a piece was published that I thought I messed up a statistic. Like I messed it up and it's wrong and we're gonna get sued. And like that, like, oh my God, like it's on me. It's my fault.
I mean, your mistakes are there for everyone to point out and to see, and that
Yep.
can be so much harder, because we are our own worst critics. So when we know that that's also out there for other people to criticize, it's kind of like, hitting you on your self-worth a little bit more, like,
And it's little by little. That's how
Yeah.
you chip away at it, right? With these
Yeah.
like little things or these little comments, or like, the pitch you were, as simple as like the pitch you were super excited that, I'm gonna win an Oscar with this pitch. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And like, no, that sucks. Like that, like letdown, that is chipping away to your like, your inner self and your self-worth. We just have to, in order for that not to happen, we have to detach ourselves, not identify or put so much weight to the career.
I know we're often afraid to speak up to our news directors because we're afraid we're going to get fired, because we're not going to make deadline, because who's going to cover us in the newscast. But just say it. We're in a job like everyone else, and deadlines should not make you focus less on yourself or your health or what your needs are just because you're not going to meet a deadline. I can guarantee you deadline will be met. And there'll be a filler package if there needs to be. Like, there's solutions, but verbalize what your needs are for sure. Don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah.
And I always ask everyone before we actually end the podcast, something you would like to help improve in the industry. I know we've talked about a few things already, like our spreadsheet helping with stories whenever somebody's stressed out or doesn't have a story to tell, and collaborating, like helping each other out in the newsrooms. Like, stop competing with each other. Let's collaborate. Let's help each other out. But is there anything else you'd like to add to help improve the news industry?
I feel like it should start from up down, right? Like that pressure of like, yes, the story is important, but like the quality of it and the health and the mental health of our employers are more important. So like I think something that should most definitely be a resource, yeah, mental health resources like this one, if companies would invest in having a resource center with, other panels of journalists or boards of journalists where you can hit up and say like, I'm struggling with this, let's talk about it. Because HR is HR, it's so corporate. You don't go to HR to cry about your trauma of the story you did in Syria in 2015.
Yeah.
Like Are they going to understand? They're corporate people. They're meant to be like really stiff and professional and everything. Literally, that's their job, to look boring.
Yeah.
Like literally, and be like robotic and read off a script. So,
And I mean, at the end of the day, they're there to protect the company, not necessarily the employee.
exactly. So it would be great, like if some of the advertiser money that these big companies make goes into a resource center for journalists, by journalists, where you can actually go and understand, but that the board of that resource has nothing to do with the company. So you can go in there, you can bitch about your boss, with the hopes of seeking a solution of how do I deal with this. We've all had bosses who like really just made the story, or editors who just made the story worse, and you can't tell them that. Like, it's challenging. So how do you navigate this when also you're running 1,000,000 times an hour? Because when that story hadn't even like stopped developing, when you already have to move into the next one.
And if I hear you correctly too, I think, aside from maybe a resource center for journalists by journalists, that has nothing to do with the news outlets or news corporations. Definitely one of the main key issues, I think, is fixing or helping improve the industry from the top down. Because at the end of the day, those directives or those editorial lines, or that pressure is coming from the top. And if we don't have good managers or empathetic managers who are also looking out for the mental health or physical health of their employees and trying to empathize, especially when we have news coverage, like really heartbreaking news, like school shootings or something, and we are forced to sometimes move on to the next story after covering a shooting. I think like taking a mental health day off is key, and that's where directives should come in and say, hey, you were at the Parkland shooting for the whole past week, take Monday off, recuperate, focus on you, let me know if you're ready to come back. Because we are living traumatizing events, right after they occur. And I think we don't speak about our mental health enough, and it's kind of like a taboo that we need to break within the industry to help people like you and like myself understand that it's okay to go through what we went through, but it doesn't need to come to a breaking point where that's what happens for you to actually tend to your needs.
Yeah, and the trick is that it's like not get to the point where you and I and so many others have gotten through, specifically this past year, obviously. But you said an important word right there, empathy. Like train. Corporate America needs to train on empathy, like literally, because I think that will solve so many other issues. We all need it, we all crave it, and just by a little taste in the industry, like to the journalist, would go a long way, I think.
I agree. Mel, is there anything else you want to add that maybe I didn't ask you?
No, I think we covered a lot. I talked a lot. So you're probably going to have to edit this down.
No, I'll only edit like tiny pieces, but no, you were great. Aside from that, I'll leave it as raw as possible because I want to capture your whole personality.
Thank you. You're amazing. I am going to binge everyone's episodes on the podcast, and I'm so honored to be here. And yeah, anyone who is struggling, and if you're listening to this, like, you can always reach out to me. And yeah, let's create this community and talk about these things so you don't get to that breaking point.
For sure. Thank you, Mel, again so much for speaking to us and telling me your story.
Journalists, this one's for you, to help you heal, to help you understand your worth, and to help you know you're not alone.
So share the love and subscribe to Spotify and YouTube and follow us on Instagram. The Awakened Journalist is proud to present Media Healers by Emiliana Fajardo.